Hello, I'm Isaac Spade, and this is my buddy Nico, and we're honestly talk.
Hello,
Ah,
nice business.
yeah,
Hello, I'm Nico.
yeah. Today we're supposed to discuss how the media actually does very untruthful things.
Like that one time they did the old applesauce scandal when they apparently thought there was hydrogen cyanide in there, and then they rebutted the whole thing like 3 days later. Yeah.
Hmm. More along the subject of basically instead of telling news that actually
Is relevant?
is, yeah, they say stuff that's mostly going to get views.
Like, I've been noticing lately that how about how much they show all like murders and crashes and things like that aren't necessarily good news instead of showing the good news. Like, how about how much the hoagie sales made yesterday for like good causes? Instead, they had to talk about a 30 car crash for like half an hour.
Yeah, which is not really
Which
that.
most of the people made it out fine and went to a McDonald's, and they had to advertise that part too because McDonald's is paying us. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing that the media often does get, as you put it, too commercialized.
Yeah. They're getting paid by lobbyists to say what the lobbyists want them to say instead of saying the truth.
Kind of also similar to another case, speaking of McDonald's, the hot coffee scandal.
Oh yeah, yeah. Go on, do tell.
I'm guessing you're already pretty familiar with what the media said about it.
Yeah, about a woman spilled hot coffee on her lap and got compensated for the whole deal.
Well, not compensated, said that it was all her fault, and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
basically
Yeah,
said she shouldn't have been driving while drinking coffee.
I never really watched the media coverage of it. I just saw the news article. So,
Yeah. But the truth was,
which is media, but
yeah. The truth was that first of all, she wasn't even driving. She was sitting in the parking lot and her son was behind the wheel. Secondly, she had it in her lap just to put cream and sugar in it, since back then they didn't put it in there for you.
and now they do because of that.
Yeah, that's partly why, but also what happened was their coffee was too hot in the first place and they knew it.
Well, being too hot, having coffee be too hot is a subjective opinion. Because although, coffee needs to be boiled to be made, I mean, they supposedly could have left it out a fair bit longer, but people are waiting in line. So I do have to make that argument for McDonald's.
Yeah, well, that is kind of fair, but to be honest, it was really literally boiling hot. Like,
Yeah, that's how you make coffee. I mean, coffee machines are just a little bit too cold to actually make proper coffee. Trust me, I should know how to make proper coffee.
well, not hot enough to actually give someone third degree burns.
Well, you're supposed to let it sit. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
But.
yeah,
But
but
it's just the whole point is the way that the media overblew the whole details and was just like, she should have been, not driving. She wasn't even driving.
yeah, and she actually asked like, okay, your coffee was literally too hot without any warning, and she had to get like all sorts of skin grafts and
I was
other.
about to say, how many burns did she sustain? I believe they were all third degree too.
Yeah, and she literally had to get skin grafts and nearly died in the hospital because of that.
Dear Jesus. And and the news went and blew it up and said, it's all her fault.
Yeah, and even to the extent where even when she said, it was your fault that I got burned because your coffee was too hot without any warning, could you at least
Yeah.
have the decency to help me pay my medical bills? McDonald said, sorry, you're out of luck.
That's really stupid to be entirely honest.
Yeah,
But yeah, can I go back to the whole apple juice thing? Because
sure.
being in the science whole thing, that was really what I knew really, really well. So there was a whole big scandal apparently that apple juice has cyanide in it because the apple seeds technically contain cyanide, and the way that apple juice people made apple juice was by pressing it with the seeds and all. So the news got word of this and they started blowing it all up. They were like, "Oh my God, apple juice has cyanide in it. Don't drink it," you know. And then the scientists were like, "No, it doesn't." And then like 3 days later, a lobbyist went to them from the like I believe it was Mott's. A lobbyist from Mott's said to them, "Whoa, whoa, you can't put that up there. We need you to take that down." And then of course the whole system went, "No, no, no. Apple juice isn't bad for you. It just contains trace amounts of cyanide." Ha ha ha. You know, we were making it all up. Don't take away our money. And then I believe it was like there was another thing about eggs. Do they contain good cholesterol? Do they contain bad cholesterol? Do they contain cholesterol? How much cholesterol is it? Can it hurt you? We don't know. And then they just kept blowing it up. It has cholesterol. It doesn't have cholesterol. It has good cholesterol. It has bad cholesterol. It's bad for you. It's good for you. It's bad for you. It's good for you. And it became so much of a pain in everybody's butts that we just stopped listening. And then they stopped talking about it altogether.
Yeah. What I'm putting it as is basically everybody with the media gives into commercializing instead of telling the actual truth.
You know what's funny is speaking of the fact that we're on YouTube right now, I can say the same thing about YouTube. It's becoming a lot like that. It's becoming very commercialized, and people are getting paid to tell lies and basically put clickbait.
Yeah. And speaking of YouTube, what about that where's the fair use thing that the Nostalgia Critic put up last year?
You know what the problem I'm seeing with the whole fair use thing? The fair use thing is becoming a problem mainly because of the same reason why the media blew up apple juice. Is one person talks about it, another person talks about it, another person talks about it, another person talks about it, and all of a sudden it gets so overblown. Like, have you ever played Whisper Down the Lane in elementary school?
Yeah.
Like, you know how somebody saying dog all of a sudden turns into frog? That's the same thing. Like, okay, YouTube's fair use basically terms are a bunch of bonk to no, there is no fair use. Oh my god, you know, it blows up, you know? Like one person saying like where's the fair use goes into oh my god, YouTube drama about fair use laws or about fair use rules, and it's just
Yeah.
it becomes a big huge hoo-ha that nobody knows anything about what they're talking about anymore.
Yeah, but like
It's all hearsay.
an argument to be fair is like say if I were reviewing a Nintendo game and said it wasn't exactly my cup of tea, it wouldn't be Nintendo's business to say, "Oh, he's talking shit about our brand. Let's take
Yeah.
his video down."
Yeah, that's really stupid to be entirely honest. I do have to say, because I really don't like you know how they say freedom of the press, right?
Yeah.
So who's to say YouTube isn't a form of basically speech? Who says it's not a form of basically media? Just because it's made by random people online doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a form of news media. Doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a form of speech. So who's to say I can't say that your games aren't necessarily the greatest games in the world? Now, who are you to say that you can take that away from me?
An even bigger example would be that the I know you don't like this channel because you don't like big name channels, but a
It's
channel
a whole.
called I Hate Everything basically
I kind
got
of like I hate everything. He's kind of bearable.
like he put up a thing about some lame PSA thing called Cool Cat Saves the Kids, saying it wasn't exactly his cup of tea, but it was bad to the extent it was funny. And the creator of Cool Cat basically just took down his vid and posted his own vid saying, "You know what? That's cyberbullying. You shouldn't say bad things about other people's content. Should encourage creativity. Blah 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 blah." Well, he was basically doing the exact same thing. He was
Yeah,
cyberbullying by not only having his having that video talking bad about his tape, his PSA tape that
yeah,
wasn't even that good, taken down, saying it uses content from my video without my permission,
yeah,
and then basically even contacted I Hate Everything, pretending to be a fake law firm that doesn't even exist, threatening to sue his ass if he doesn't back off.
yeah. That's kind of screwed up. I'll be entirely honest.
That and impersonating a law firm like that is absolutely against the law.
I'm pretty sure that's illegal. But yeah, weren't you also supposed to talk about how the media can be good, or was
Yeah,
that just me hearing
it is
things?
good because despite all that bad stuff, it gets information around. Like if
It's
I wanted
actually
to, I could literally look up what's going on, say in Tokyo or
yeah,
England or
yeah.
even Paris.
That's actually the point I was about to bring up because without the news, like I actually, me and a friend of mine were sitting in my garage and we were just playing around, and he saw a news thing that Carrie Fisher had a heart attack in a plane, and he was like, "Oh my God, like is Carrie Fisher gonna die?" And we knew this like a few minutes before like the whole news thing got around to it, and that it was just a few minutes that some article came up that Carrie Fisher had a heart attack before the news got on and was like, "Holy crap, Carrie Fisher had a heart attack." So I'm like, we knew this like moments after this happened. So, I mean, that's the good times when the news can be actually like good is like, oh, this person that you grew up with knowing how, and now this. That was actually pretty emotional. Like, just
Yeah,
me being a Star Wars fan, just seeing that, I was like, oh my God.
and with that, like, there's also the issue of like, along with the media,
Yeah,
with the spread of media, like here in America, quite literally, our top of the line internet service we have here
yeah.
is bottom line for South Korea.
That's absolutely true. And a lot of things here are pretty much being exploited for the sole reason of capitalism, which I have nothing against capitalism, but I don't have anything for capitalism. But that's not the point of this whole situation.
Yeah.
Um,
But like if we actually were
but when
to
you think about, yeah,
yeah, if we were actually to release that and actually have our internet service be like equivalent to all around the world,
hmm,
we could possibly even get information around faster, like so fast that as
yeah,
soon as it happens, it actually gets reported.
yeah, because that's another thing I was about to bring up is also how, as fast as the TV can get to something is like 10 minutes slower than the internet can. Because like I was about to say with the whole Carrie Fisher thing, that was an article on the internet, or it wasn't even an article. I think it was like I forget where Sammy got it from, but that was like on the internet that he found that. And I was like, "Oh my God." And then the news covered it like 10 minutes later and I was like, you know, I think it was just like a Google thing.
Yeah, and they probably even waited longer to say that she didn't survive that heart attack.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 days later than when they said that, and I was like, I already pretty much knew.
Yeah, considering she was already like looking kind of like not to be rude or anything or speak ill of the dead, but like when I saw the newer Star Wars, the first of the newer Star Wars trilogy,
Mm,
she looked kind of like the age to be a grandmother.
yeah. I mean, I think when she died, she was only like 60 something though. And I know people that in my personal family that have survived into like well into their 90s. So that's actually pretty young, to be entirely honest.
Yeah,
Like honestly, if she would have lived as long as my great grandmother, she would have had at least another 28 years in her.
which sorry.
Considering that I've lived less time than 28 years, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, but honestly, we hold the problem with the media is like although it is good that we get information around fast,
Yeah.
it's not exactly good that not only do we get information around fast, but we censor too much what
Yeah.
like honestly the media would probably be better off not sugarcoating anything like they don't
But
bother
yeah.
sugarcoating the Orlando shooting.
Here's the thing. And I kind of understand why the media censors things because when you look back at some of the things that were censored, and they were censored so that people didn't start going like, "Oh my God," and like, start flipping out. So I can see how that can be good, but I can also see how that can be bad. Like, because they could basically say they want to censor something because for the good of people, and then they just end up censoring it just because they don't want to show it.
Yeah, like even like say if there's someone protesting their new like say if someone was
Yeah,
protesting Fox News, if Fox
yeah,
were to
and they
cover
won't
it,
show that, but they'll show people protesting Trump,
yeah.
their own president, that more than half of the country voted for. That's democracy. If people vote for him, and he wins, then, I mean, they have the right to protest, but they don't have the right to win. And I'm not saying I'm for or against Trump, but that's democracy. How can you, this own country's news, start promoting that and like basically spreading that all over the place so that other people will do it? They're basically the people who are causing the riots.
Yeah, like the what you said off camera earlier was like
Yeah,
basically true that the reason the media is talking so bad about Trump is because Trump wants them to be more truthful.
exactly. That's the whole point. It like Trump wants to basically make lobbyism not a thing, which would make the news kind of not a thing either. But like I said earlier, I take neither political points of view because I like to stay on the bright side of either situation. So I don't want people being like, "Oh my God, he supports Trump, so I don't like him." But then there again, I don't want to be the guy who supports Hillary either because both of them are knuckleheads.
Yeah.
I'll
Honestly,
be honest.
if you ask my opinion, I think Bernie should have won.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But this isn't a political discussion; it's a news discussion.
Yeah. Although another thing is that with the news, they also waited to report stuff that was actually even potentially a hazard to us. Like
You know what?
they waited a while to actually report that Note 7 fiasco
Yeah.
and basically blamed entirely Samsung, saying, "Oh, Samsung's trying to kill us."
Yeah, you know what's funny? Actually, while we're on the subject of like what the news does to censor stuff, they didn't cover Bernie at all. They didn't cover anything that he said, but they covered everything that Trump and Hillary said. So basically, they made the candidates. Because if they would have covered things that, let's say, Ted Cruz or Bernie Sanders or somebody else on the Republican side, because I don't know anybody else, like the only one I was following was Ted Cruz. But if they would have said stuff about one of those two, maybe they could have been in the presidential lineup. No, instead the media said Hillary and Trump before the nomination was even placed.
Yeah, because, like, I kind of see your point with that, because they hardly even, from all the news I've actually seen when just walking around my own house with the
Yeah,
television set the news,
yeah,
all I've seen is literally, oh, Trump's talking shit about this, or oh, Hillary has this controversy with her emails, or
yeah. Nothing about, and also the whole idea that they said that Trump did nothing during, or not Trump, Bernie did nothing during the civil rights movement. He was in a college at the time pretty much protesting for them.
yeah. So
And Cliff Stoll was getting shot at, but that's a whole different story.
there's also a thing that with Bernie, he wanted to act. He actually was supposed to be in the what is essentially the finals for the election instead of Hillary,
Yeah,
but because the media kept covering Hillary, 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 the
yeah,
Democratic Party itself rigged it so Hillary would go to the finals with Trump,
yeah,
not just some. Like another thing that goes into account is like literally those who vote for third parties too. They don't even bother with the third parties in the
yeah.
media.
You know what's funny? They were covering, I forget what other party it was, but they weren't even covering Jill Stein. Which is it's really sad because if they would have even won 5%, they would have got a lot of funding, maybe even enough to make it with the big boys and like actually be a part of the election next term. But instead, people didn't vote for them because they believed that it was a waste of a vote, which is really sad to think about that because if either Stein or Johnson would have won 5%, they would have gotten a lot more funding.
Yeah, because like since the media said it, we essentially ended up with President Trump, who honestly does a lot of stuff that's incompetent.
Like I'm not gonna go ahead and like say either point about the whole refugee thing, but he honestly shouldn't be imposing that on his first few weeks of being president.
Yeah, it's like the media is trying to rig it to get him removed from office.
Yeah, that's another big thing is the whole media is just going on about like how they don't like what he does, just so that they can maybe get him impeached. But that won't really work because of the whole Bill Clinton thing. But that's a story for another day.